Good morning, everyone. This is Roman with Holistic Dog Training, and we're going to talk about big dogs. Not just big dogs, really big dogs. And not just any type of big dogs, in particular, Mastiffs, Presa Canario, Cane Corso, Neapolitan Mastiffs, Dogo, you name it. We're going to talk about it in general. I'm not going into many details. And the reason why I feel entitled to talk about it is because I'm working with Mastiff breeds and Guardian breeds in general for full time since 2007. Worked with several rescues, national rescues, as a foster trainer, as a behavior consultant over the years. And I think I should have worked with over 2,500 families, mostly Mastiff breeds and Guardian breeds. And the reason why I thought I would talk about today is because I feel we reached a critical situation where people are misled to treat Mastiff breeds a certain way. Um, and I feel this has to be addressed because it causes a lot of issues um, towards the dogs and towards the families. There's a misconception about how large breed have to be trained and cared for, and and this is the reason why many people have to surrender the dogs or dogs getting aggressive. And I think it's a good time to share that video with your favorite groups. Add some comments on top. Usually, Facebook rejects this kind of no comment posts, and because I think everybody should know about it. And the reason why I feel entitled to discuss it because coming from a broad range of training concepts, I started back in my early training career as a aversive trainer. I recognized my big mistakes. I felt and I was mentored into balance training and recognized that this is not the right way to go. And this is where then I shifted with a better experience into holistic training and behavior modification because it's important to recognize that the way you educate your dog is the way the dog will handle situations. And so from scientific perspective, we see that a dog's character, the way we see a dog, is a good dog, bad dog, stupid dog, smart dog, aggressive dog, fearful dog. There's the part of which is genetic pre-configuration, which is normal. Um, a dog has to be a dog. So in his genetic information, there is dog. There's a dog package. And then we have breed-specific genetic information, which helps the dog behave in a certain, let's call it general terms. Um, a dachshund has certain dachshund traits, and Corso will have a certain Corso traits, and a Bull Mastiff will have certain traits. So these traits are really basically a baseline, a foundation, and on the top of foundation we have the rest of environmental factors that affect the dog's character. So if you look at that, it would be like 25% genetic predisposition, and in this 25% you have a sliding scale. So each different behavior traits will have a sliding scale. I'm not going into many details here, I'm just giving you an overview. And as the puppy being raised in the family, and as we interact with the dog, those sliding scales would shift a little bit, depending on morals and ethics and the way people interact with their dogs. Um, and so, if we look at that a little bit, we see I give you here a symbolic. So, what affects the dog's behavior? And I give you just a general overview. So, we have this number six, which is genetics. We have food, we have age, we have nutrients, we have stress factors, we have exercise, we have the gender, sex of the dog, we have the location, we have the purpose, and then we have health, we have water also affect the dog's behavior, and we have a relationship. So all these things that happening at the same time as we raise the dogs. If we lose control of one of those segments, dogs will have behavior issues. Now, if we raise a puppy, we're coming from this concept that, and usually the confusion comes in that people says, yeah, dogs are dogs and you have to treat them like animals. We're doing better than that. The last, let's say, 40 years, phew, 80 years, yeah. Oh no, yeah, 80 years. We know that animals are just not animals. They're sentient beings. Even the ancient Greek had conversations about and studies done and philosophical studies done around animals and how we should treat animals. I remember a specific context in a Greek literature that says you have to treat your horse and your dog like you would treat your friend. Were these old people stupid? I don't think so. They knew a lot. They lived in harmony with their animals. And in certain cultures, we have animals and mastiff breeds in particular as valued companion, and even gods and religious belief system included them as very high in this spiritual hierarchy. Let's call it this way. We have warriors. Alexander the Great, he had a mastiff, and he spread the idea of mastiffs throughout his countries, going into the east and the west and the north and the south. And each of his officers had a mastiff as protection dog, as personal protection dog. So we have this long history of human dog interactions. We just cannot ignore it. Unfortunately, the last couple of decades, I would say in the decades between 19 late 1800s and through the 1900s, and now in the beginning of 2000, we have this shifting going on for how to treat animals, how to make animals comply, into slowly switching into the idea how we can help animals to be part of the family. And don't take me wrong, I'm not a person who says dogs should not be in a family. Dogs are have a concept of family. And even so, some people suggest, which is false, but that's what they say, that dogs are pack animals. There is scientific evidence and proof that was a misconception in the very beginning. So whoever told dogs and wolves are pack animals, the idea was misinterpreted. There were books written about it and rejected. Their dogs are pack animals and wolves are pack animals because they live in packs. Well, with that concept, we can say families, you and me, having packs, and you have the pack leader. Well, it sounds strange, and I know many people says, "Well, yeah, that's what it is." No, it's actually not. And if people suggest that's what it is, then I would like to see a scientific paper that actually confirms it, because the person who invented that idea of the pack animal and pack hierarchy actually rejected it and actually did a video about it. Unfortunately, the person who had the rights of the book did not comply to the science, Dr. Mech, by the way, to his request to take this book off the shelves because they made a lot of money out of it, so they wouldn't do it. So we see there's an idea behind that that says, you know, we say and promote and want to do things that are easily to be adopted by people, and so there is nothing easier than making the dog comply by using force and aversive methods, because it works. It does really work. Speaking as trauma survivor, I can tell you that if you use force on me, it works. I will feel threatened. I feel, you know, helpless, and I would just do what you tell me to do because I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my whatever that I feel I have to lose. And so dogs are the same thing. Dogs are emotionally very intelligent. Okay, just because they don't speak the language doesn't mean they don't speak a language. They have a very complicated language, kind of complex language. It's an emotional and body language that comes in together to describe a situation. So if you have a puppy and you raise a puppy, it's not a puppy just barking, pooping, and peeing, right, and chewing and stuff. Is he learns how to integrate in his family by reading body languages. Now, unfortunately, the dog cannot imitate human body languages because we are upright and they are horizontal, and they stand on four legs and we are only on two. So there's a lot of confusion coming in. But at the same time, we need to learn and adapt to their natural body language. So they have this pre-programmed language that they're talking about, and we need to be aware of these things. Otherwise, we're going to confuse our dogs. Yep, actually, you're correct, Barbara, Dr. Mack, refuting his own theory. Okay, and to give you a heads up, that theory was actually a very old theory coming from the ants, the dominant hierarchy of ants in this complex society. And they took that idea and then, because the only theory that was out there, they applied it to wolves in captivity. Two Swiss actually scientists did that in a Swiss zoo, and that's the only language they knew to describe. So they used that language to describe wolf behavior, and then Dr. Mack take that and apply it into wolves in captivity, and then recognize that wolves in captivity don't actually behave like wolves in real life. And so then this is where he changed his mind about it and wanted the world to know that, hey guys, we're wrong. Wolves don't behave like this. They don't kill each other. Okay, this is not the idea they have. They're family. They have complex family hierarchy. There's a matriarchic, um, and so we need to also to check exactly. And so we need to check in with this because we have this misconception. We study wolves and then we project it onto the dogs. And because wolves are big, it's much easier to project it onto the mastiffs and mastiff breeds. Now, the reality is that dogs and wolves are less directly related genetically as we with bonobos. Bonobos, I think that's what it's called. So, and we're not treating each other like apes. We have evolved over this period of time. We have these common ancestors, but we're not directly related. Okay, so if I go down the jungle, my genetic, I'm not related to an ape. Now, I'm not saying that wolves and dogs have no connection, but they have a very common old ancestor, like the ancient wolf. And we're not really sure if that actually the case because they look similar doesn't mean they're coming from the same root. The studies are open there. Nobody really knows exactly different ideas out there when actually the dogs being um, pulled into that relationship and that evolution living with people. Some people says actually that people got educated by the dogs. All right, the ancient Native Americans actually say the dogs were before the humans came to Earth. So there is a previous history on the description of a dog. But some things in the past cannot be proven now, so we kind of like vague try to understand things. But we see from cultures, belief systems that mastiffs play an important role in human society over those centuries. And the reason why I'm going so far back is for you to understand that mastiffs didn't show just up lately in homes. They're always being in homes. Their size was beneficial to people. Some mastiffs have been bred or being held to work in landscaping and land in farming, sorry, landscaping. Some of them were for transportation, some of them were for protection, some of them were for hunting. So we have these different breeds, but basically we have two core ideas: the guardian breed and the hunting breed trait. So these two are being evolved over the centuries. So you will see mastiff who have more like a hunting drive, and you have mastiff who have more in guardian drive. And here are the two different ideas. The one is easy to leave and return, and the other idea is staying close and protect. So, from that concept, we have to be aware of if we have a puppy, those options are open, and usually they evolve around week 14 to 16. So, this genetic predisposition of a dog to become more a hunting driven dog or a guardian breed depends on how do I work with my sliding scale. Okay, um, we're gonna do a completely different um, conversation about the breed traits and how they're being assembled and what functions they are. They are not only good and bad. All of them have a function, but we have to understand how to address that. By the way, I'm having a puppy parenting workshop coming up. You can visit my website, holisticdogtraining.org/events, and you can sign up for it because I feel training needs to be learned by the parents, which is you. And that information that you have then to apply to the dog. So they learn. You, as a surrogate parent, you, as an adopted parent, have this responsibility to continue this education that a dog has. Dogs don't stop learning when they're being adopted, and they're not being educated before they're being adopted. It's a continuing learning process, and Mastiff breeds, different than other breeds, are more likely to have a longer education period than other dogs because they have this complex brain system and a complex nervous system. So for them, everything that happens have to have a reason, and they have to need to understand why it's happening. While other dogs really don't care. And one other thing that I see very often is that people misinterpret the strategies around working with dogs. And I feel the problem here starts with old belief system that dogs are pack animals, which we explained, and then that people have to be the pack leader, which is weird. And then we have these ideas that the dog has to be punished if he makes a mistake. And this is where I want to focus a little bit today because I see very often dogs getting in trouble lately. We have these COVID dogs, who are all over the place. People wanted to adopt a puppy, hanging out in home all day long, very stressful. So we get a puppy, we get the rescue. Rescues want to get rid of the dogs anyway because that's a good opportunity. And many mastiffs who were trapped in shelters being adopted out. Because shelters really don't able to kind of do these clearings and home visits. At that time, they just had to get rid of the dogs because there was nobody there to care for them. So there are a lot of flukes into homes of dogs who really had behavior issues. So if you look at the behavior issues, we have different roots of those behavior issues. First of all, the one thing that I see very often, let me pull up a screen here. I think I have a picture that will help. Doop, doop, doop. No, actually not. One reason that I see very often is that, or do I have it? Hold on a second. Yeah, I do. There you go. Let me pull that up for you so you can see it with me. So 50% of common reasons dog bite and end up in shelters is the miscommunication and no consent. Okay? And most of the dogs who end up in a shelter have one of those issues. Some dogs have trauma. So dogs felt threatened at some point in their life, and which affects their behavior around their family. And then we have accidents behaviors and accidentally behaviors where dogs just did things without really knowing. And then 5% of those who had bite history and end up in a shelter had neurological or reflex or cancer or severe pain. So just those four reasons is what makes the dogs going to the shelter. And my question is, can we help those dogs not getting there? Because there are a lot of dogs, right? And yes, if we look at this number here, 50% miscommunication, is because we have these misconceptions that dogs don't speak a language. So you have to punish the language or reward the language into them, which is kind of weird to say like that. We need to see that if we have a dog and we need to work with a dog, we have to speak his language. Okay? We cannot expect the dog to learn your language. Now, we have consent. We have rules and limitations in the household. Limitations means the dog cannot go anywhere in the household. The dog cannot do everything he wants to do. It's because we have these weird human rules that are unsafe to the dogs. The dog cannot just run over the street, he's going to get hurt. The dog cannot just chew on cables. So if we look into that, we have to fulfill certain things before we do the training. First of all, we need to help the puppy or the dog recognize his biological needs. And I'm referring here to this amazing work, The Hierarchy of Dog Needs, from Linda Michaels. And I want to shut it up a little bit here because you see, their biological needs to be met first, which is a primary, which means proper nutrition, fresh water, sufficient exercise. Because if you don't help the dog with those basic needs or biological needs, the dog will have behavior issues pretty soon. The next thing we look for is emotional needs. The dog needs to learn about his emotions. He needs to manage his emotions. He needs to master his emotions. He doesn't come emotionally pre-programmed, right? So pieces of the dog feeling secure, the dog feeling cared for, the dog trusting his family, and being consistent and benevolent leadership. And leadership, I'm not talking about pack leadership. I'm about leadership as a parent, right? All these things need to be prepared. You're hearing a dog playing in the background. Then we have social needs. Those need to be met. So we have this misconception that dogs are pack animals again. And this is a problem here because dogs are not pack animals, they're social animals. So therefore, they need to have social education. They need to learn how to bond with people and to dogs through play. So if we don't teach them how to play and we don't teach them emotional management, then they will not be able to be social. And then, of course, we have the training needs, that educational part. And don't take me wrong, training is not everything. People are focusing on training, 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 but they miss the previous social, emotional, and biological needs. And of course, we need to look for, if we do training, we're looking in a do not harm concept. We need to look into management of those behaviors. We need to look for the dog actually having ability to make choices and troubleshoot situations. And then, of course, we have cognitive needs. If a dog doesn't have a choice, if a dog doesn't have skills to problem solve a situation he's in, how will he be stable? You're always being forced to micromanage. And most of those training modalities out there, all they do is forcing the dog into compliance without having any other choice, which means if the dog is not being managed, then he will not be able to succeed and follow through a problem, right? Now, on the other side, we need to look for that if we're not setting the dog up to success and we're not clear about our personality traits, our own parenting skills, what kind of parent are we actually? What are our parenting skills we want to do? Um, we need to recognize that we have this four type of parenting, but we need to focus on the center point. We need to be balanced in with the way. Sometimes we need to step up and demand things because they need to happen. Some of them we need to kind of look away from it, let it happen, let the dog go through an experience. The other one have to say, help the dog understand what we're doing. So we have to break it down in individual pieces and explain the dog how to work with these things and eventually show them how to do them. And then we have other things that we look for is to sometimes just ignore things, just like that. You cannot just stick to one thing or the other. You have to be in the very center of it. Just like with type of um, reinforcement. You have this positive reinforcement, you have this negative reinforcement, you have this positive punishment, you have a negative punishment. Those are not directly related to the physical thing that you do to your dog. For example, if you ask your dog to sit and you give him a treat, it has a complex situation in there in itself. First of all, the dog wants what you have, but you don't give it to your dog because you want him to sit first. Did you think of that? So even if you reward the dog afterward, before that you didn't give it to him. So you had something removed that he wanted that he didn't get until he was compliant, and then you would give it to them. If a dog jumps on you, we turn our back, right? If your dog barks, we talk. So there are things that we add to the situation, and there are things we remove from the situation. Some things help the situation to become better, and sometimes this situation becomes worse. Sometimes we want to things to show more often, and sometimes we want things to not show as often or diminish completely. So based on that concept, we need to become completely aware what the situation with the dog is. What's the dog's point of view? Sometimes giving a dog a treat because he performed, but his problem is not solved, is a problem for the dog, and you're not helping. And sometimes yelling at your dog only make things even worse. Sometimes even saying nothing is even worse than saying something. And these are the things that we have to become aware all the time, constantly, and not just us. If we have a family, we have kids, we have a partner, we have other dogs, everybody needs to be on the same page. You cannot have multiple parenting system in that family. Like you have to treat everybody with the same idea, with the same approach. So you cannot be mean to your dog and let the kids get away with it, or you cannot have the dog do everything he wants and then the kids have to apply to it. You cannot expect for a 2-year old to be emotionally more mature than a 5-year old dog. And you cannot expect a 5-year old child to become a dog's parent and educate the dog and teach him how to do things. It's not going to work like that because kids like dogs don't always are aware of their own body language and their own emotions. They just do things because it comes up. Now, if we use aversive methods to try to manage that, then we create another problem because the dog doesn't learn from it. He's being punished for it. So while the pup is in these early stages, explore the environment and they want to learn things and they're open to perceive things, trauma is very easily to get in. A simple explanation. You take your dog for a walk, he thinks you're going out for a dog in the park, he ended up at the vet's office, right? There are three people stretching his legs because he's a big dog, right? He's being stretched on. One is holding his neck, the other one is pulling his leg back, and the other one is picking in his butt. Well, how do you think that end up for your dog? How do you think your child will feel like that if you bring your child to the pediatrician and three people take your child away in the background? You have to sit outside and you hear your child screaming and yelling inside. How would you feel about that? What do you think is going in your child's brain at that moment? Why don't you make that configuration if you work with your dog? And I understand people says don't humanize children. That's idiotic. I would say humans and dogs are mammals. They have emotions. They are emotionally intelligent. They are sentient beings. They have feelings. They have thoughts. So if we see that concept, then we recognize there is a strange triangle. Okay? We have emotions, we have behavior, and we have thoughts. So if a dog thinks about something and he can associate that thought with an emotion, right? And he feels a certain way about what he thinks, that will trigger a behavior. So for example, if I say the word shark, I just use a word. I trigger in your mind to think about a shark in the water who kills people. And if I tells you what would you do feeling that way, you kind of like pulling yourself away, try to kind of make yourself smaller, walk away from it. So there's an emotional response to what I just said. And then I tells you, how do you feel about a shark vacuum cleaner? And everybody's like, shark vacuum cleaner. Oh, thank God, because that made me feel better. So while shark triggers a thought, they add to that word of a cleaner, vacuum cleaner, all of a sudden that thought is being directed in one direction or the other. So we see if I can direct thoughts in a direction that is more positive and emotionally positive than negative, then it's more easier for you or the dog to think in that direction because dogs, just like people, want to stay away from stress. It's natural. Surviving means less stress, be away from fear. So let me show you something here. Maybe that will explain. So I call this 5 F's. Okay, stress responses. So we have a fight flight response, and in between we have a freeze response. They are well documented, and I would like to add into those responses that we usually think of. I want to add the flirt and the favor as a stress response. While stress is a very important tool to dogs, we need to see stress, and you know it's it's misinterpreted very often. We need stress. If we're not stressed, we will not wake up in the morning. We will not be in time. We will not make the eggs the way we want them because we don't care. So stress is a natural motivation for us to perform better and evolve emotionally and in real life. So if a dog goes into a fight response, he will behave a certain way. If a dog goes into a flight response, he will behave a certain way. If a dog feels in the freeze response, he will behave a certain way. But if we teach the dog to flirt with the situation and not immediately react to something, but be able to think through a process and associate and socially connect with the environment. And if a dog could actually ask us in a communication for a favor, that would change the way the dog will respond next. Okay? So, for example, let's see an example. You're walking your Mastiff down the street and he sees a neighbor, and he gets super crazy about that neighbor. And all of a sudden, your dog will respond in a fight response, right? Now, fight response doesn't mean always kill, it can mean going towards, interact with, right? And he starts pulling. And what do? You're forcing a dog to stay back, so you add force to it, which all of a sudden now it becomes an issue. The dog actually learns that if he sees something, there will be a resistance. Therefore, he has to pull proactively to get there faster before you can apply resistance. And all of a sudden, now we have a leash pulling situation. But all you have to teach the dog, for example, we talked that in my class, is for example, hey, how about when you have the feeling that something is happening around you that triggers your response, your stress response, how about you check in with me and see what I have to say about that? Because I will be able to help you get there faster. And all of a sudden, you have a two-way communication. While before that, your dog was only in his me world, me, myself, and I. All of a sudden, he takes you in consideration to make his choices. Hey, what do you think? Since dogs are not pack animals, but they're social beings, they cooperate and they work together to perform better. And so if you are a part of his support team, he will reach out to you because he wants your help. Now, if a dog, for example, sees himself in the mirror, that's Maxi, by the way, when he was young, and he could respond a certain way, but he doesn't. He tried to understand what it is, what's in the mirror that looks like a dog. Does he recognize himself in the mirror? I wouldn't say that directly, the way we think it is, like, oh, I see myself in the mirror. We know even people, if you show them a mirror the first time in their life, they don't know who that person is on the other side because they never associated themselves with themselves through the mirror. I know people, just maybe you and me, don't even able to look at their mirror and look in their eyes. We don't know who we really are until we literally look into ourselves. But it's an internal reaction. It's not an external behavior, right? It's an emotional response to that. Now, this connection to see myself into another or recognizing myself onto another, recognize that what I see is not me, it's somebody else. It's an evolutionary process. It's a learning process. It's a social skill. It's not just born with it. And then we have the most important part that we have to think of, that sometimes the way the dogs interact are because there is an attachment in this situation where the dogs need to learn about things. And if they don't learn how to be attached to situations and to people and to dogs and the social settings, they don't know how to respond, right? And the other hand, if we don't recognize that there is trauma involved, then we're not understanding why the dog is struggling with his behavior and social interactions. We're going to talk about that in the class anyway. Now, one thing that I see also very often is people get confused because the dog doesn't respond correctly and they want the dog to respond differently. So we have to recognize that dogs show behavior, and remember the triangle. If a dog shows certain behavior, it's connected because he feels a certain way. And he feels a certain way because he thinks a certain way. Now, I would like you to do an example, a test for yourself right now here on the spot. I would like you to lift your shoulders and press your shoulders against your neck really hard. And I would like you to think what emotions come up, right? And keep the shoulder together like this. Okay? And then put your shoulders down and see how you feel now. You see, if you do a certain body language, it triggers a certain emotion. And that emotion can lead to a certain thought. Do another exercise. Do this. Like that. You see, all of a sudden, there's your body responds because it doesn't make any sense. He tries to understand why you do this behavior. And so, because of that behavior, is connected to an emotion, and to a thought, a consequence. So if I don't do this, I'm going to get hurt. So I have a fear response coming up. So if we go back to this training part, if I force my dog to sit, considering sitting is an emotional expressed behavior, sitting means I feel safe in that spot I am, if the dog sits on his own, then it comes in with a package of emotions, right? If I feel safe, okay, I feel safe to observe, and I will sit here and be patient observing my environment. Hmm. What happens if I force my dog to sit in a complicated situation? I thought of that. So while we have trained the dog to sit or trained the puppy to sit, we're forcing the dog in emotional feelings that are not appropriate to the situation he's dealing with. And then you wonder, if we're going back to think about why dogs bite people, right? Remember this one? It's because there's a miscommunication and no consent. So we ask the dog to sit in a stressful situation that he would rather leave or attack, and then he compresses, and then people try to reach out, and then they have a dog bite. Or we take the dog out for a walk and somebody's yelling and barking at him, and you ask your dog to sit by forcing the dog into an emotional state he's not ready yet, so you're causing trauma. So simple things like that can cause a whole behavior pattern, uh, an avalanche of emotions kicking into the dog, and he stops trusting you. And all of a sudden, a simple training exercise, totally positive reinforcement, totally up to date with modern science, can cause your dog to have a behavior issue and you don't see it coming because you didn't understand, because nobody talked to you about, hey, you're forcing your dog into emotional body language that will trigger emotion, would trigger a thought. What would your dog next time think when you ask him to sit? Oh, we have a problem again? What do you think if your dog, you want to get his attention? What would the dog think about things? Like, oh, is the problem coming? That's why you want my attention? So parenting is more complicated than just obedience. And I don't even understand the concept of obedience. Why does the dog have to be obedient? There are other concepts. What about compliance? What about conformity? Why don't nobody talks about that? I don't like my dogs to be obedient. Sometimes I need it. Indeed, I need it. I want my dog to return right now because I told him to, because he doesn't understand the danger he's going in and he's going to kill himself running up the street. I need absolute obedience right that moment. But that's not always. And if I say something to my dog, I want him to feel good to follow through and not being afraid of it. I don't want my dog to be afraid to go any further because he's afraid it's going to punish him, because that can eventually break and make the dog walk further instead of coming back to me. But if a dog associate my call with something that's beneficial for him in his evolution, the dog is more likely to consistently return, and it's actually scientifically proven is working, right? And he will come to me more likely than using force methods. Scientifically speaking, 25% more likely to follow through long term than using aversive methods. And trust me, I was using aversive methods in the past, and I totally believe they were right until I recognized I was not as right as I thought I am, because I wasn't sure what I was doing. Just because I have experience with dog doesn't make me I know about dogs, right? So just because I'm driving a car since I was 16 doesn't make me a car mechanic. Having dogs and living dogs my lifetime doesn't make me a professional. And there are many people out there who will share a lot of information, totally makes sense because you're coming from the same mindset, but that mindset doesn't mean it's right. I'm not saying my mindset is right. I'm saying based on what I understand right now and based on what science confirms and based on my experience over the last 20 years, 30 years, what we look for here is a different understanding of animal behavior and relationship with people. And especially around mastiffs, it's very important because they were bred and they always been together with humanity. Dogs weren't born small, dogs were big. Why would you have a small animal to protect you around the campfire? Why would you have a small animal to go for a hunt? You need a big animal. big as you are, but not too big, because you don't want the animal to consume more meat and and resources than you do. So you had to find this golden middle way. We have a big family of 10, 15 people, all family members, and we had a couple of dogs who came to us because of this beneficial relationship, right? They stayed longer. We feed them more likely. They start joining. They become family. They have a first offspring. That first generation of offspring is what basically is the domestication. So dogs first came, from my perspective, to come to live with us because of this good opportunity, right? Because there was a good opportunity to do less and gain more, and then the first offspring of that relationship become a human dog relationship in the way we understand it now. And it's pretty quick. It goes really quick. So you don't need thousands of years of evolution for a dog to figure out that staying with humans is better. But it takes a long time for those information to be embedded in the genetics for you to work with. So my behavior program and my parenting program also includes those ancestor, quote, emotional information that's embedded in your dog that you can call up and says, hey, the reason why I'm here is because you know that I am of benefit, but I have to prove it to you so you know I am the one. It's the same that you are feeling about. And the reason why you trust me is not because you need to be afraid of me, it's because it's beneficial. It always have been beneficial. What do you think? What do you think? Do you think we need to treat mastiffs like wild animals, like lions? And because people abuse those dogs and got into war, and we have dogs to do things to people, do you think we have to treat dogs because of what we believed in the past? Or we have to treat animals like all the animals, with dignity, with respect, with love and care? Because they didn't choose to come to my house or to our house. We got them in the house. So they are forced into that relationship. So we have a forced relationship. So, how would you like your forced relationship to end up for yourself if somebody else would take you and put you in a place? Like, I know some of you may be adopted. That direction I'm going here. Somebody took you away without your consent, put you in a family, and you have to stay there no matter what. You can't even get out of there. That kind of relationship. Or you want to go an easy way and says, hey, I see you as my family member. It happened. You're now here. Now I want to make the best out of you. I want you to have your maximum potential, to be the dog you can be, to have the relationship you can have, to be just able to navigate through troubleshooting skills. And you just address things because you know this will have that consequence. And you make your own choice that I would like to do this. And then you have somebody who says, I appreciate you for that. Thank you for offering that behavior. That makes me feel better. And make me feel better, meaning is we have a better relationship with better survival. Better survival means you and me are still here doing our stuff that we like. So that's my thought. I know it was broad a little bit, but in the workshop we're very detailed. We start all the way around. We talk about nutrition. We talk how nutrition affect behaviors. We're gonna fix that. We're gonna see how our emotions and our mismanagement can trigger dogs' behavior. We can recognize how trauma can be healed and affected. What do we need to be helping the dog proactively to not get to the trauma situation? How to teach the dog bite inhibition so he doesn't bite to hurt. He's gonna bite to control, which is two different concepts. We discuss how to actually train your dog safely without causing problems in the future. Many people train their dogs thinking they're doing the right thing because somebody told them to do a certain way, and then they end up having problems. How many people are forced to believe that the prong collar or the shock collar or the choke collar will fix the problem, but actually it doesn't, because if it would be fixing the problem, they would need those tools. But yet here they are walking around with them and they cannot get rid of them because the whole concept was based on something that doesn't work. It works from our perspective because we get what we want, but from a dog's perspective, it doesn't work because they don't understand the concept. Anyway, um, yes, and if some of you have behavior issues and you need help, welcome to reach out to me. I do behavior consultations, right? Start with a behavior assessment. I can literally real time observe your situation, exactly what's happening in your house. Like just you learned here from me now, and we talked about stuff. I can pull up slides, I can show you videos, I can see you doing things in real time, and we can talk about stuff. And at the same time, you get understanding better concepts. Concepts actually work, they're scientific based. We're going into the edge of the scientific evidence as we progress, as we go further. I can see science catch up. I'm not saying that we can only do things based on science, because if we only go with science, nobody will research things. Nobody goes further than science. So I would consider myself, I'm pioneering in the direction of trauma based and secure attachment based behavior approach, opening up the opportunities for people to look further to that. Yes, dogs can have trauma, dogs need relationships, dogs, human relationships can be healed, behavior can be healed, they don't need to be corrected. And that's my concept. And I think I got it down to a good results over the last at least 14 years. I've lost counting now. And I think um, wait, a couple of questions here. I think that we have to sometimes consider limitations. As people, we have limitations too. I agree, limitations, but we can set up limitations without using the word no. We can help the dog not getting that opportunity to get that idea that he has to get to that direction. I recognize when people get into the training dogs, they give the dog so much room to expand, and the dog will take that in consideration. So if I give him room to go up to my bedroom, he will take that advantage. Why not? Why would he not? Dogs are exploratory. They want to expand and explore. So I don't give him access to my bedroom. He will never have the idea to go to the bathroom, because bedroom doesn't exist in his mind. So therefore, I don't need to limit it in his mind. It's just not possible. So limitation, yes. On the other hand, we need to be very careful the way we put limitations, because sometimes we take limitations because we are not taking in consideration that we can give the dog that room to work if we do a little bit of work around that. So I can give my dog access to my bedroom if I set certain rules in place, right? I can have my dog in my kitchen and him not counter surfing if I make sure I have his basic needs met and he's not hungry and starving. So I don't have to limit him out of the kitchen if the problem is not there, it's somewhere else. But I see what you're saying, and I agree with you in general. We should consider limitations. I'm not saying dogs should do whatever they need to do. Good. Okay, I need to hop. I need to leave. I have a session in a minute. So I just wanted to share, and thank you for you guys for being here. Thank you for the question, and thank you, my wife, super supportive, for sharing stuff, and my class. Thank you support team. See that's what I'm talking about. Support team. You would never say no to your wife if it tells you something. Being in that support team, right? Yes. Um, Alexandros Zubuloglu. Did I say it right? Give me a thumbs up. um, so, thanks for watching, and please add your comments. I will follow through with them if you have any questions. Exactly, Angela. We need more opportunities for chewing, for instance, and we would help avoid the long list of issues. Right. So, yeah, I give my dogs chews all the time. They're healthy for them. And Toxero. So for you guys who wonder what I'm talking about, I'm Greek Austrian, so Alex speaks Greek too. I'm not sure if he's from Cyprus or from Greece, but back to the country. Greetings. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you guys are interested, I will put the link to my workshop up in the comments, and hang out there because I will post more workshop coming up for the next year. Thanks again. Goodbye.